At my baby shower, surrounded by my family, my husband's relatives, and all our friends, my mother-in-law stood up, locked eyes with me, and said, "We're getting a paternity test, just to be safe." She said it like she was offering me another slice of cake, like it wasn't a huge deal to publicly question whether the baby inside me even belonged to her son. And then, the man I had loved, supported, and trusted for 5 years, my husband, nodded in agreement. "Can't hurt," Jason added, not even looking at me. It was like we were discussing ordering takeout, not our child's identity. I glanced around. Half the room froze. A few guests gave awkward laughs, assuming it was some twisted joke. My sister's cheeks flushed red. My mom dropped her plate. And me? I smiled. I took a deep breath, stood up calmly, and said, "Already did one." But it wasn't for Jason. It was for your dad. The entire room went dead silent. You could feel the atmosphere collapse, like the air itself had fled the space. Then chaos. Shouting, crying, people trying to leave. My father-in-law almost knocked over a table. Jason just stood there, stunned, staring at me like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. But I wasn't the one hiding secrets. That's what they never saw coming. My name is Alyssa Hart. And by the time I was 7 months pregnant, I had already made peace with the fact that my child's last name might be the only thing connecting him to Jason's side of the family. My home was glowing with pink and gold balloons, soft baby blankets, and cupcakes shaped like tiny baby bottles. I had spent weeks planning that baby shower with my younger sister, Jenna. It was the first time I'd allowed myself to truly feel excited. For the first time in months, I wasn't sick or bloated or overwhelmed. I was hopeful. I stood in front of the mirror in a rose-colored maxi dress, resting one hand under my belly, and smiled. That smile wouldn't survive the day. Jenna peeked into the room and whistled. "Damn, sis, you don't even look swollen today." I laughed and tossed a pillow at her. "Thanks. That's probably the nicest thing anyone's said to me in weeks." She walked in, adjusted my necklace, and asked, "Ready to see Margaret?" My stomach turned. Margaret Hart, my mother-in-law, had a talent for draining the joy out of any room. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. She never outright insulted me. She didn't have to. Every comment came with a polished smile and a layer of judgment beneath. The first time we met, she scanned me up and down and asked if my parents were in education or entertainment, as if I couldn't have gotten into law school without some kind of backdoor. And yet here I was, still trying to win over a woman who never wanted me to win in the first place. "I'm not ready," I admitted, "but it's Micah's day." That was our baby's name, Micah. A name I chose, one Jason didn't even fight me on. I thought that meant something. I thought he was finally stepping up, that we were becoming a team. Guests started arriving, college friends, co-workers, old neighbors, cousins. My mom, Diane, was the first one through the door, juggling food and trying to fix every centerpiece. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "You look like a goddess." I hugged her tight. "I don't feel like one, but thanks." Then Jason's parents arrived, and the energy changed instantly. Richard hugged me a little too long. He always did. Kissed my cheek. Lingered like he wanted to say something more. He'd send me late-night messages asking how I was sleeping, how the baby was moving, if Jason was being good to me. I used to think he was just overly kind. Then I started noticing the patterns. Margaret followed him in, holding a cake box, wearing that signature tight-lipped grin. We brought our own cake. You know how Jason loves chocolate. She glanced at my belly and smirked. "You've grown." "I'm pregnant, Margaret." That's kind of how it works. Her smile widened. Yes. Well, not all weight gain is baby-related. I forced a laugh and slipped into the kitchen. Jenna came in right behind me. I swear if she breathes wrong, I'm flipping the buffet table. Please don't, I replied. The food's actually good. Despite Margaret's passive aggression, the party went off fine, for a while. There were games, gifts, and laughter. My best friend gave a toast. My aunt cried during the slideshow. Jason rubbed my back while I opened gifts. Tiny onesies, classic storybooks, baby rattles. He looked proud. I looked loved. But beneath all that, I stayed on alert, like a frayed wire ready to snap. Margaret hadn't said much to me directly, but she stayed close to Jason, whispering in his ear whenever she could. When I caught his eye, he smiled and shrugged like it was nothing. But I could tell he was hiding something. Not guilt exactly, more like nervous hesitation. He looked like a man tiptoeing through a minefield. I just didn't know which one. At one point, I noticed Richard sitting alone, watching me. Not Jason, me. His eyes lingered on my face, my belly, my hands. When I looked back, he quickly turned and adjusted his watch. But I saw it. My skin crawled. I moved closer to the group. The last game was about guessing baby stats. Just as we were about to start, I caught Margaret whispering again to Jason. He nodded this time. He didn't look thrilled, but he nodded. My mom noticed too. She leaned in and asked, "What was that about?" No idea, I lied. But I had a bad feeling. Margaret never whispered good things. I was expecting something rude, maybe a passive-aggressive dig, maybe a concerned remark about my parenting. I wasn't ready for what actually happened, but I should have been. Because when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And Margaret had shown me exactly who she was from the very beginning. We had just wrapped up the baby trivia game when Margaret cleared her throat and tapped her glass with a fork like she was about to give a toast at a wedding. I froze. She wasn't smiling anymore, not even her signature fake one. Her expression was flat, intentional, like a judge delivering a sentence. I just want to say, she began, thank you to everyone who came today. It's been enlightening. A few people laughed politely, not sure what to make of it. Jason glanced nervously at me, then back to her. But before we get too caught up in the excitement, she continued, Jason and I have decided we're going to get a paternity test, just to be safe. Silence. The music kept playing, but softer now, like the speakers were ashamed. Someone near the back let out a weak laugh. My cousin cleared his throat. My mother blinked slowly, as if the words hadn't registered. But I understood them instantly. And they landed like a slap. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Margaret stared straight at me, waiting. Jason stepped forward and rested a hand on my shoulder. His voice was low, casual, almost bored. Can't hurt, babe. Just to quiet everyone down, right? I searched his face for a hint of sarcasm. Anything to suggest he was joking? But he wasn't. He meant it. He believed it. I rose slowly, not speaking yet. Jenna spoke for me. Are you serious? She snapped. You're really doing this here? At her baby shower? Margaret's smile came back, tight and deliberate. We just want to be sure. That's all. With how fast everything happened after the wedding, and with Alyssa's background, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. My mother stood too, her cheeks flushed. And what background would that be? Margaret shrugged, as though she were being perfectly reasonable. We're simply trying to protect our son, our family. Surely you can understand that. To stand in my home, eat the food I had prepared, watch me unwrap baby gifts, and then accuse me of lying about my child's paternity, in front of everyone. And to do it like it was a weather report? The audacity. Jason didn't say anything else. He stared at the floor, silent, passive, like a little boy caught between arguing parents, like he had no voice in this, no backbone, like he wasn't the man who had picked out this nursery with me, this home, this future. Richard finally spoke, quietly. Margaret, maybe this isn't the time. She turned to him. If not now, when? When she's already put his name on the birth certificate? When it's too late? I looked at him too. He held my gaze for half a second before dropping it. There it was. No one who should have defended me did. And that hurt more than the accusation. This wasn't about the baby. It wasn't about doubt. It was about power. Margaret's final test. Her way of seeing if I would fold or fight. She wanted me to grovel for their approval, but I wasn't going to. What Margaret didn't know was that I had seen this coming. A month earlier, after one too many suspicious late-night texts from Richard, I began paying attention. One message came at 1:14 a.m., just checking if Jason's been home much lately. You okay being alone so much? He wrote. I showed it to Jenna. She said out loud what I had only let myself feel. It was off. So I ordered a discreet at-home DNA testing kit. I swabbed my cheek. And one night, while Jason slept, I took a sample from him too. Then I waited. The results came a week before the shower. The baby was a full match with Jason. I knew he would be, but a small part of me needed to see it in writing. I needed certainty. Then, on a whim, or maybe on instinct, I used another sample. Months ago, Richard had left a family ancestry kit at our place over Christmas. He was proud of his Scottish heritage and had talked about tracing it back generations. The kit had been sitting in our closet ever since, so I sent that in too. Not because I thought anything would come of it, but because something inside me whispered, check. The results came back. I sealed them in an envelope and tucked it in my purse. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. Not yet. But they were there. Ready. So now, standing in front of everyone, accused in my own home, I knew what to do. I could have stayed quiet, let the shame linger like smoke, or I could speak. I looked around the room, at the guests, at Jason, at Margaret, and then I smiled. Actually, I said, I already did a paternity test. Margaret blinked. You what? I stepped forward, pulled the envelope from my bag, and held it up. But not for Jason. I tested the baby against Richard. You could almost hear the silence rip through the room. Someone in the back muttered, Wait, what? Like they were praying they'd misheard. But they hadn't. I already did a paternity test, I repeated, clear and firm. Not for Jason, for Richard. Richard went pale. His glass slipped and clinked against the table. Margaret's mouth opened and closed, completely stunned. Jason looked from me to his father, confused and speechless. My mom held the edge of the table like she needed it to stay upright. Jenna folded her arms and moved behind me, a silent wall of support. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood there, envelope in hand, with a calm fire in my chest. I had imagined this moment so many times, but I never thought it would feel this still. Richard finally found his voice. Alyssa, what are you saying? I looked him square in the eye. I'm saying I got tired of being treated like a liar, like some outsider who trapped your son. I knew someone would eventually question me. So I got ahead of it. You tested me? He asked, voice shaking. Without permission? You gave it when you left that DNA kit at our house last December. You didn't think it mattered then? I did that? He muttered. Margaret slammed her glass on the table. This is disgusting. You're insane. I met her glare. I'm exhausted. Exhausted from defending myself to you. I've never lied to your son. I've never given you a reason to doubt me. But you've never needed one. You were just looking for an excuse. Jason finally spoke. So, the test came back negative? What exactly are you saying? I faced him. I'm saying Richard isn't the father of this child. There's zero biological connection, and I never thought he was. But the fact that I had to do that test, that should tell you everything about the pressure your family put on me. He stared at me like I was speaking in riddles. You thought my dad might be? Why would you think that? I didn't. I noticed things. Late messages, inappropriate comments, the way he looked at me. And every time I brought it up, you told me not to make drama. So I did what you didn't. I got the truth. Richard stood, red in the face. This is character assassination. I never touched you. I never said you did, I replied. But your behavior was out of line. And if I hadn't protected myself, everyone here would still be wondering whose baby this is. So I proved it. Margaret took a step forward, her voice rising. You've humiliated this family. No, I said, steady and clear. I gave you exactly what you asked for, the truth. The envelope was still in my hand. I walked over and set it on the coffee table right in front of Jason. Read it or don't. It's yours. But I'm done explaining myself. The room that had felt festive just minutes earlier was now frozen in an icy quiet. People shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to speak, leave, or stay. Jenna leaned toward me and whispered, "Want me to start clearing people out?" I nodded. Start with Richard. Richard didn't budge at first. He glanced from Jason to Margaret, then back to me. His mouth twisted into a sneer. You don't belong in this family. I tilted my head. That's funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you. Jenna moved toward him, and that was enough. He finally turned and walked out without another word. Margaret followed, fuming, her expression sharp with fury and disbelief. Jason remained still, staring at the envelope as if it might burn him. He hadn't opened it. He hadn't said a word since I placed it down. And I didn't need him to. I knew what it said. My mother came over and gently placed a hand on my back. You didn't have to go through all that alone, baby. I looked at her. Yes, I did, because no one else was going to stand up for me. After the last guests left, Jason finally broke the silence. You should have told me. You didn't have to go behind my back. I turned to him, and you didn't have to agree with your mother in front of a room full of people. You didn't have to say, can't hurt, like I hadn't given you every part of myself. You want to talk about betrayal? Start there. He didn't respond, and I didn't press. That wasn't my job anymore. That day, I didn't just defend myself. I reclaimed something I had slowly been losing ever since I married into the Hart family, my voice, my power, my peace. I had spent too long waiting for someone else to defend me. In the end, I was the only one who did. The house was quiet. Jenna was in the kitchen, collecting dishes. My mother was consoling a shaken family friend on the couch. The air still smelled like frosting and fried chicken, but the sweetness of the day had long since vanished. Jason sat on the edge of the couch, eyes fixed on the envelope. He hadn't touched it, hadn't even looked up. I stood a few feet away, waiting, but not hoping. Eventually, he spoke again. I just don't understand why you had to drag my dad into this. If you knew the baby was mine, why even go there? His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was small, confused, like a boy trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Because I saw where it was headed, I said. Your mother has been planting seeds since I told her I was pregnant. I knew it was only a matter of time before she said something publicly. I just didn't know when. You still could have told me, and you still could have defended me. But you didn't. That hit him. He looked down again, then slowly reached for the envelope. He opened it and read through both sheets, flipping them back and forth as silence filled the space between us. So, Richard really isn't a match, he finally said. Nope, not a sliver of DNA, no biological connection at all. He nodded. And you? Really never thought he was the father? I stared at him hard. Are you asking me that as my husband or as Margaret's son? He flinched. I just want to understand. I stepped closer. Then understand this. Your father sent me messages at 1 a.m. He asked if you'd been coming home. He made comments about my due date being suspicious. He told me more than once that if I ever needed anything, he'd be there, no matter what you decided to do. That's not how a father-in-law talks to his pregnant daughter-in-law. That's how a man talks when he thinks he has leverage. Jason swallowed hard. Okay, I believe you. But I didn't respond. Because belief wasn't enough. Not now. Not after what had happened in front of everyone I cared about. From the hallway, I could hear my mother saying goodbye to some of the guests. Jenna came back into the room and gave me a long look. No words, just understanding. Her eyes said everything. You did what you had to do. Margaret never came back into the house. I saw her through the window, pacing near her car, phone clutched to her ear, furious. She didn't look hurt. She looked exposed. And that, for her, was worse. My mother returned and rubbed my back. You did good today. I leaned into her. I didn't want to ruin the shower. You didn't, she said. You saved your child's future from being surrounded by people who only know how to question and doubt. She was right. That moment hadn't ruined anything. It had revealed everything. The next morning, Jason told me that Margaret had sent him a long email. She accused me of manipulating the situation, of turning him against his family, of humiliating Richard unnecessarily. But what she didn't include? The DNA test results. She didn't deny them. She didn't acknowledge them. And she certainly didn't apologize. Jason didn't let me read the entire email, but I saw enough to know that Margaret's version of events left out accountability altogether. Richard, on the other hand, said nothing at all. No phone call. No message. He didn't refute the messages or explain the timing or his inappropriate behavior. He just disappeared. Jason later told me Richard had gone to stay with a friend. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I didn't care. A few days later, Jason came home from work early. He brought flowers. Yellow tulips, the kind he knew I liked, and he sat me down at the kitchen table. I called a therapist, he said. For myself. For us. I need to be better. Not just because of what happened, but because I've let this go on for years. I've let my mom run the narrative, and I should have stood up for you. You shouldn't have had to fight alone. I listened. I appreciated the words, but I also told him the truth. It would take time. Trust doesn't return just because someone says sorry. It comes back slowly, in layers, rebuilt through changed behavior and consistency. He asked if I still wanted our baby to have his last name. I said yes, not because of tradition, not because of pride, but because I still believed he could become the kind of father who would earn it. Micah arrived 3 weeks early, strong, healthy, and loud. He had Jason's deep-set eyes and my stubborn mouth. From the moment he was born, he screamed like he had something to say, like he came into the world with a story to tell. When Margaret asked if she could visit us in the hospital, I said no. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She had wanted a paternity test. I gave her the truth. But now that the truth was here, she didn't know what to do with it. The truth didn't just clear my name. It fractured everything that had been holding us together in silence. It broke the pieces that needed breaking. And in their place, I finally had the chance to build something stronger. The hospital room was still, quiet. Micah slept, curled up against my chest, his tiny breaths warm against my skin. Jason sat nearby, watching us, hands folded, eyes heavy, not from exhaustion, but from everything we'd faced. For the first time in months, there was peace between us. Not because everything was perfect, but because there were no more secrets. Micah's birth wasn't a reset. It was a mirror. He brought with him a truth we could no longer ignore. We could either rise to meet it or fall apart in front of it. In the weeks that followed, the silence from Margaret and Richard was deafening. Not a call, not a visit, not an apology. Margaret did send a gift, a silver baby rattle with Micah's initials engraved on it. No note, no message. Just an object wrapped in soft blue tissue, left on our porch like a peace offering from someone who didn't understand what peace really meant. I placed it in a drawer, not out of spite, but because it wasn't my decision what to do with it. That would be Micah's one day. That part of the story belonged to him. Richard remained absent. Jason told me that his father still hadn't explained the messages, the glances, the inappropriate tension. He hadn't admitted guilt, but he hadn't denied anything either. And for Jason, that said everything. We moved forward carefully. Jason began setting boundaries with Margaret for the first time in his life. He canceled their weekly dinners. He stopped answering her late-night calls. He told her clearly that until she could show respect for me, she would not have access to Micah. Period. It wasn't easy for him. Jason had always been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over, who swallowed his discomfort to keep others happy. But he finally understood that silence in the face of cruelty isn't neutral. It's permission. And for the first time, he chose not to give it. Jenna came by often in those early days. She helped me set up the nursery, held Micah while I napped, reminded me that I had done the right thing, even if it had made things uncomfortable. Especially because it had made things uncomfortable. My mother became fiercely protective. She called me every morning just to check in. I welcomed it. After what I had been through with Jason's family, I held tight to those who gave me love with no strings attached. I didn't forgive Margaret, not right away, maybe not ever. But I did stop letting her live in my head. I stopped worrying about what she might say, what lie she might spin next, what backhanded comment would be whispered over dinner. She had shown her hand, and the entire family had seen it. And once the truth is out, raw, unfiltered, undeniable, it's hard to twist it back into something polite. People talked, of course. Cousins called with questions. Friends who had attended the shower sent texts, some supportive, others uncomfortable. But none of it mattered more than what I now carried quietly inside me. The knowledge that I had defended myself without cruelty, that I had protected my son before he even took his first breath, that I had done what so many women are warned against. I stood in a room full of people who doubted me, and I didn't back down. Jason and I started therapy together. We didn't try to jump back into old habits. We didn't pretend nothing had happened. Instead, we talked about trust, about loyalty, about how easy it is to lose each other when fear and silence take the wheel. Some days were difficult. Some nights, we sat on opposite sides of the couch, not speaking, unsure of how to begin again. But we kept showing up. That, more than any apology, gave me hope. One afternoon, when Micah was about 2 months old, Jason looked at me across the living room and said, "Thank you for not letting them break you." I looked down at our son sleeping in my arms and replied, "I didn't do it for them. I did it for me, for him, for us." Because that's what I had learned. Love isn't passive. It's not just choosing each other when things are easy. It's choosing each other when the room turns against you, when your name is being whispered in doubt, when you're surrounded by people waiting to see if you'll fold. Love is what shows up when it's hard, and if it doesn't, it's not love. It's convenience. I hadn't set out that day to destroy anything. I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. I only wanted to protect what I was building. But sometimes, protection looks like confrontation. Sometimes, it means breaking the illusion so that something real can grow in its place. To every woman who's ever been doubted, dismissed, or disrespected because someone else couldn't handle her strength, let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't need their approval to tell the truth. And when they try to twist your confidence into arrogance, your honesty into hostility, don't let them. Show them how dangerous truth really is. Micah won't remember that baby shower, but someday, when he's old enough, I'll tell him the whole story. And I'll say this: the day they tried to question your place in this world, I made sure they never did again. If this story resonated with you, if it stirred anger, gave you strength, or reminded you of your worth, I hope you carry that feeling with you. Too many women are taught to keep things quiet, to protect the family image, to avoid making waves. But truth matters. And your peace? It matters even more. So if you've ever stood in a room full of people who doubted you, who talked over you, who hoped you'd sit down instead of stand up, drop a speech bubble in the comments. Share your story. Or just say, "I'm here," because you're not alone. Like this video, if it hit home. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Your voice is powerful. Subscribe to this channel for more unfiltered stories. Stories that don't shy away from the truth. Until next time, protect your peace, trust your gut, and never let anyone test your worth for you.